Well, it appears that our less educated daughter-in-law, the unremarkable plain Jane, is about to grace us with her singing. Come on, step onto the stage, you ugly duckling, my mother-in-law sneered. It was my sister-in-law's wedding reception, and I was coerced into performing a solo, as was customary whenever my mother-in-law found an opportunity to belittle me. Her audacity to humiliate me, even on such a joyous occasion as my sister-in-law's wedding, was beyond my comprehension. What's taking so long? Hurried up? She's getting impatient. Her voice hardened. Okay then. I will. Excuse me. I stood up from my seat and slowly made my way towards the stage. I'm Erica, 33 years old, living with my 4-year-old daughter Janice and my husband Paul, who's the same age as me. We're in our 8th year of marriage. Orphaned as a child, I was raised by my grandparents but chose to be independent, dropping out of high school to work at a local factory. Paul and I reconnected at a high school reunion when we were 21, hit it off, and started dating. 3 years after Paul graduated from university, we got married. Since then, I've been supporting him, managing our household chores, and raising our daughter while working part-time. Mom, teach me how to sing, Janice has been asking me recently. Neither Paul nor I had any intention of forcing music onto her, but I have a background in music, having been the president of the choir club in high school. I still love singing and even take voice training lessons as a hobby. Janice developed an interest in music naturally, and I hope that one day we can perform together with Paul's music. Returning home 3 days later, my mother-in-law called, resuming her habit of belittling me since she discovered I dropped out of high school. She often showered me with insults, criticizing my abilities and family background. She wasn't my favorite person. Hello, is Janice there right now? My mother-in-law asked. I'm sorry, she's at voice training right now. She's not home, I replied, realizing I had let something slip, but it was too late. Why didn't you tell me before letting her attend such things? You really don't think things through. I'll teach her, my mother-in-law insisted. Despite her accomplished musical background, she tended to take a condescending tone when it came to music and education. She doted on our daughter but might inadvertently push her away if she followed the same strict teaching approach she used on Paul and his sister in the past. Mother-in-law, I appreciate your offer, but I want Janice to have her freedom in this. Even if you say that, it's really up to Janice whether she wants to continue or not. I can't force her to quit. I'm sure it would be much better if I taught her. My mother-in-law abruptly ended the call. 3 months passed, and I'd almost forgotten about the incident when my mother-in-law decided to visit our home. It's been a while, hasn't it? Oh, how's Janice been doing? She inquired, likely happy to see her granddaughter after such a long time. As soon as she stepped into our home, she immediately scooped Janice into her arms, barely greeting us. It just so happened that Janice had the day off from her voice training class, and the whole family was at home. Granny, I've become good at singing, Janice exclaimed, boasting to her grandmother. Really? Could you sing something for me then? My mother-in-law asked. I intervened, worried about what my mother-in-law might say to Janice. How about we eat first before we hear her sing? It's lunchtime after all, I suggested. Don't interrupt when she's about to sing for me. My mother-in-law dismissed my suggestion. I'm sorry, Janice dear. Can you sing for me? My mother-in-law asked. Hearing her request, Janice began to sing. From the perspective of a mother-in-law who graduated as the valedictorian of a music conservatory, my daughter's singing must have sounded rather clumsy. I had a sinking feeling inside me, worried that my daughter might receive some snide remarks from her. However, my mother-in-law applauded and praised my daughter, saying, "You did well. You've practiced a lot." Far from making any sarcastic comments, she thanked her grandmother, seeming happy to be praised. I sighed in relief, thinking that even my strict mother-in-law wouldn't make snide remarks to her granddaughter. I thought Mom might say something. I was a little worried. Paul whispered to me with a look of relief on his face. Nothing particular happened after that. But as the evening came, I realized that Janice had fallen asleep. "Excuse me, mother-in-law. Since Janice fell asleep, I'm going to take her to her room," I announced, picking up Janice and carrying her to her bedroom. After putting my daughter to bed, I returned to the living room. As soon as I re-entered, my mother-in-law said to me, "Didn't you think that Janice's singing today was terrible, Erica? It's a waste of money to let her go to a class that can only teach her to that level. I'll teach her myself." I confronted Paul as anger welled up within me. "Wait a minute, isn't that a bit too selfish? What can we do when it comes to music? She's much better than me, and it's a fact that I got better by being taught by her," Paul reasoned. About 5 minutes of silence followed, and it was Paul who gave in and said, "All right, Mom, go ahead and teach Janice to sing for a while." Hearing those unbelievable words from Paul's mouth, my mind went blank. Is this some kind of joke? Won't they care how Janice feels? After all, she has been so happy to be interested in music. What if Janice hates music because she's taught so strictly by her grandmother? I was so angry that I felt like waking up Janice right at that moment and leaving the house with her. "So I guess it means Janice is quitting the voice training class, as I said, right?" My mother-in-law, with a triumphant look on her face, asked Paul and me. "All right, but remember, this is not a music conservatory, so please absolutely do not do anything that Janice would dislike." "I know that you know I'm not uneducated like you," I retorted, stating what I had to say, knowing she'd never back off, and I let her go home for the day. That night, my husband apologized for his mother's behavior, but I did not even want to see his face. I ignored him and went to bed. The next morning, I told my daughter Janice, "From today, instead of going to the voice training class, let's have Grandma teach you to sing here at home, all right?" When she heard it, she looked very sad but said nothing and just nodded. I apologized seeing her like that. Then, come noon, my mother-in-law arrived at our home. "Janice, starting today, Grandma is going to teach you to sing even better," she said to my daughter with a smile. No sooner had the lesson started than my mother-in-law's teaching style became more and more strict. Within an hour, she criticized Janice harshly, demanding perfection. "You're wrong. You're making the same mistake in the same place. Do it again." I knew it would turn out like this. "Mother-in-law, this isn't what we agreed to, is it? Could you be a bit gentler?" "What are you talking about? I'm being gentle. Don't interfere. Why don't you quietly do some housework that you can hardly handle?" 4 hours passed, and at last, my mother-in-law's lesson ended. "Well, see you tomorrow. Remember to practice what we did today," she left, seemingly pleased with herself. If I'm going to get yelled at this much, I don't want to sing anymore, seated in her chair, Janice said to me. I harbored an intense hatred for my mother-in-law, taking away what my daughter enjoyed and only caring about her own satisfaction. This cannot go on. I won't let my mother-in-law have her way. Her singing lessons continued in the days that followed. However, after about a week, Janice told me, "I don't want Grandma to teach me anymore. I don't want to sing." Given my mother-in-law's way of teaching, I thought it couldn't be helped. You don't have to force yourself. If you want to quit, that's okay too. So you don't want to go back to the voice training class. It was something she had started because she wanted to, and I, for my part, wanted her to continue. So I asked her that. If it's that class, it seemed that Janice hadn't come to hate singing itself. It appeared that the harsh words from her grandmother and the lack of praise, even when she felt she did well, were making it unenjoyable for her. Why don't you go back to your voice training lessons and give it another shot? I asked Janice, and as if she hadn't been upset moments before, she perked up and nodded enthusiastically. So I'm sorry to say this to you, grandmother, but from tomorrow, Janice will be returning to her original voice training classes. The next day arrived. I relayed Janice's feelings to her grandmother over the phone. How can she whine about giving up after just a week? Isn't it your fault for raising such a weak-minded child? My mother-in-law exclaimed. I retorted, well, it might be, but even though you graduated top of your class from a prestigious music college, It seems that's the only way you know how to teach. Janice told me that she preferred her voice training teacher. Fussing and fuming, my mother-in-law continued, but I ignored her and hung up. Whether she was top of her class or not, it was quite satisfying that her own teaching method had led to her being disliked by her granddaughter, who preferred her voice training teacher. After that, the visits from the grandmother ceased. I've spoken to your mother and told her it was okay if she didn't come to teach anymore. Janice said she didn't want it anymore either. I also feel like I've done something unforgivable to Janice. Back in the day, my mother was very strict with me about music, so I couldn't say anything. But I thought she wouldn't be so harsh on her granddaughter. I'm really sorry, I confessed to my husband Paul that night. When I relayed this to him, he seemed deeply regretful and apologized. I was so angry when Paul suggested quitting Janice's voice training class and having the grandmother teach her. I almost felt like punching him, but fortunately, Janice didn't come to hate music, so I decided to forgive him. 2 weeks later, Paul said, "My sister is getting married in a month, and she asks us to perform." I had never performed at someone else's wedding before. What kind of performance is she expecting? I was planning to bring a few people from my band and do a small concert, but my sister really wants you and my mother to sing as well. Hearing that the grandmother would also be performing, I reluctantly accepted Paul's suggestion. So, does that mean I'll be singing with your mother? Well, yeah, that's how it seems. Singing with my mother-in-law of all people, I wondered if it would be all right. But if I happened to sing better than her at this performance, I wondered what she'll say. I started practicing the very next day, but there was no sign of my mother-in-law practicing at all. "Mother, aren't you going to practice?" "I'm fine. I'm much better than you, even without practicing. After all, practice is something that people like you, who are not very good, need to do." I tried asking because I was curious, but the only response from my mother-in-law was sarcasm. I decided it was a waste of time to engage with her and focused on my own preparations. After we decided what song to perform, I also increased the frequency of my voice training lessons. I was sick of being ridiculed by my mother-in-law, and above all, I was anxious about performing in public after such a long time without proper training. On the day of my sister-in-law's wedding, the ceremony went smoothly, and the time for the entertainment had finally come. First, my husband Paul took the stage and began to play his music. As expected, given he plays regularly, he was confident and exuded an elegant aura. I was utterly mesmerized by Paul's performance. "I'm not feeling well today. Could you sing on your own?" Then, out of the blue, my mother-in-law told me to sing solo. "What? That's so sudden. It's not fair." "Well, there's nothing we can do about it." "Or what? Are you too embarrassed to sing in front of others because you're uneducated and ugly?" She said this without a hint of remorse. Okay, I know it. She's doing this on purpose. I thought and decided to retort. Being uneducated and ugly. I've practiced hard, so I won't be embarrassed singing in front of others. I asked you several times if you needed to practice, but you showed no signs of doing so. Could it be that you're actually a terrible singer? That's not true. My mother-in-law raised her voice in response to my question. The people around us began to stir, wondering what was going on. Sorry, it's nothing. I got up from my seat, apologized to those around me, and then pressed my mother-in-law further. Graduating as valedictorian from the music college, you sure talk big about teaching others, huh? Are you running away because you're embarrassed to sing with me since I'm better? I whispered this in her ear. What did you say? There's no way that's true. If I sing with a low-educated, ugly person like you, it would only throw me off. Didn't your parents teach you that you and your parents are truly incompetent? She disparaged me as being uneducated and ugly and even insulted my parents in front of everyone. Embarrassed and angry, I wanted to leave right at that moment, but if I ran away now, it would just make her happy. What are you doing just sitting there? Hurry up and go. Okay, then I will. Excuse me. Just as Paul's performance ended, I took his place on stage. I was supposed to sing with my mother-in-law, but due to her not feeling well, I would be singing solo. Instead of the song I was supposed to sing with her, I chose an opera song I used to sing a lot when I was competitive, an aria from The Marriage of Figaro. And so, I began to sing. At that moment, perhaps due to the vocal training I had done, my condition was excellent, and I was able to produce the most beautiful vibrato I'd ever achieved. It was amazing. The audience was mesmerized by my singing, saying things like, "Wow, her voice is incredible," and "Is she a professional?" When I finished singing my song without any hitches, the audience gave me a standing ovation, showering me with thunderous applause. Congrats on your wedding, sister-in-law. You know, I used to be the choir leader in high school. It's been a few years since I last sang in front of an audience, so I was a bit nervous. How did I do? Thanks so much for listening. After making this statement, I returned to my seat, and my daughter, all starry-eyed, pleaded, "Mom, your voice was so beautiful. Can you teach me next time?" Witnessing this, my mother-in-law, with her jealousy on full display, said in a huff, Anyone can sing like that. Don't get ahead of yourself," continuing to belittle my singing. Just as I thought the entertainment segment was over, my sister-in-law unexpectedly said, "Mother-in-law, and you should sing too." Words that I didn't expect came out from my sister-in-law. My mother-in-law was taken aback and looked at her daughter in confusion, asking me, "I've never heard you sing, Mom, and since you taught me so much about music when I was young, I'd really love to hear you sing," my sister-in-law expressed with pure honesty. The attendees chimed in, "Mother-in-law, you should definitely sing." Words had gotten around that my mother-in-law was a top graduate from a prestigious music school, and the crowd grew increasingly excited for her performance, creating an atmosphere where she felt she had to sing. "Well, with all this, I guess you have to sing now, don't you?" I did not hesitate to add, "So, all right. If you insist," she responded, heading to the stage. The moment my mother-in-law took the stage, the energy in the room peaked. But as she began to sing, such murmurs could be heard throughout the crowd. "Wait, no way. I might even be a better singer." She must have heard them as well. My mother-in-law's voice did seem off, but even accounting for that, her singing was dreadful. She always criticized others for their singing, but her pitch was all over the place. Honestly, I felt I was still a better singer. The atmosphere grew awkward as her performance ended. Unlike when I sang, the venue was filled with a cold atmosphere, and the applause was sparse. Everyone acted as if they'd seen something they shouldn't have, as if her turn had never happened. Upon returning to our table, my mother-in-law, her face flushed red, shouted at me, "That's why I didn't want to sing. If you had sung properly, my daughter wouldn't have asked me to do this," she said to me with such an angry tone. But I didn't understand why my sister-in-law asked her mother to sing. It seemed to me that she genuinely wanted the wedding to be blessed by the voice of her mother, who had been sternly teaching her about music since her childhood. "Do you think so? To me, it seems she genuinely wanted you to sing." I shared my honest thoughts with my mother-in-law. No way. I'm sure she knew I'm bad at singing, and this is her way of embarrassing me. I was utterly astonished at her response. She had always criticized others' music and performances, yet she herself didn't want to sing in public because she's bad at it. She never hesitates to complain about others' music, but she is like, "I don't accept complaints, although I'm a bad singer myself." Such a self-centered attitude won't be accepted. My daughter Janice might have her newfound love for music crushed by her grandmother. I could no longer bear my mother-in-law's attitude. So, a person who studied at a prestigious music school and criticizes others' music is just doing so because she can only sing this badly. But mother-in-law, isn't it great? You are able to sing alone without having to sing with a terrible singer like me. I responded to my mother-in-law with a sarcastic tone. "How dare you say that? It's your fault that I had to embarrass myself. It's not nice to say that in front of your daughter." I'm sure she's satisfied hearing her mother singing. As I spoke these words, my mother-in-law fell silent. There was a stir amongst those who'd heard what I had said to my mother-in-law. But other than that, the ceremony went on smoothly and ended without any problems. 2 days after the ceremony, my mother-in-law stormed into our house. "I just can't let it go. I want you to apologize for what had happened." I was surprised by her sudden visit but retorted, "What exactly am I supposed to apologize for? I wasn't aware that your singing was that bad. Instead, I think you owe us an apology." "What do you mean? I have absolutely nothing to apologize for. It's your fault I was forced to sing that song I hated and embarrass myself." "No, not to me, to Janice. Because of you. Janice almost came to hate the music that she had started to enjoy. Even though you graduated from a prestigious music school, why would you torment a child who has developed an interest in music just because things didn't go your way? Is that what you learned from your music school? I haven't received any musical training from you, yet I was able to sing at the reception and even received applause. How about you, mother-in-law? Shall I give you some singing lessons? I'll teach you thoroughly." My mother-in-law was speechless hearing what I said. "If you have nothing else to discuss, please leave. I won't tolerate you interfering with our daughter or my husband's music anymore." Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law left our home without another word. Her shoulders slumped into defeat. I felt a sense of satisfaction from being able to retaliate so fiercely in her area of expertise, music. It was indeed worth continuing my voice training since my youth. Without the voice training, I might not have been able to receive such applause at my sister-in-law's wedding reception. I wonder how my mother-in-law, who has always boasted about graduating top of her class from a prestigious music school, felt being scolded this way by someone like me who only has a high school diploma and was just a choir member. To be honest, I felt a sense of poetic justice towards my mother-in-law. I thought, serves her right. She shouldn't act so haughty anymore. It's been a month since the wedding ceremony of my sister-in-law, and now my mother-in-law occasionally visits our house, but she doesn't complain about my daughter's singing anymore. I actually didn't mind my mother-in-law visiting since she did not say anything about music anymore. My daughter Janice, who has improved a lot in her singing recently, is challenging a slightly difficult song given as an assignment in her class. "Mom, this song is hard, but I'll try to sing it beautifully," she declared, practicing enthusiastically. "That's great. You do your best. You'll definitely do well." Although I love singing, don't know much about the technical aspects, so I had no idea what was difficult about the song. But seeing my daughter working so hard, that's all I could say. On that day, my mother-in-law, who happened to be visiting our house, observed the interaction between me and Janice and said, "Erica, this song is not something you can handle by just doing your best. Janice, listen well. You should do it like this." It was incredibly kind and patient of her, which was unimaginable given how she used to be, to explain until Janice understood. "Oh, thank you, Grandma. It's easier to sing now," Janice said as she listened intently to her grandmother's advice, working hard to master her assignment. "Erica, I used to look down on everyone doing music without graduating from a music college. But after meeting someone like you who can sing so beautifully without a music degree, I changed my mind. After all, we should enjoy music. Could you teach me to sing next time?" My mother-in-law said that looking at Janice singing. I was surprised to hear such a thing all of a sudden, but I'm sure the sarcastic comment I made after my sister-in-law's wedding had its effect. "My lessons are tough, you know. I grant this," I replied to my mother-in-law. "Oh, I won't do anything horrible anymore. I feel sorry for Paul too, although it's too late now. But if you're going to be tough, Erica, I'm prepared." After hearing that from my mother-in-law, I felt assured that she won't say anything about her music anymore. Although a lot had happened, the tension between my mother-in-law and me eased off, and since then, we've often gone to karaoke together, becoming close enough to sing together. I hope that one day when Janice becomes even better at singing, the four of us, me, Paul, Janice, and my mother-in-law, can have a fun jam session.